Not everyone who harms you is simply toxic. Some people are unknowingly serving the work of Shaytan. They don't need to touch you to drain your Iman. Just their presence, words, or influence can leave you weakened, doubting, and blaming yourself. You've already crossed paths with them. You just didn't recognize them for what they were. The friend who chips away at your self-worth. The cousin who greets you warmly, but sows quiet doubts in your heart. The coworker who fuels your worst habits and laughs when you slip. They're not strangers. They're already in your circle. And here's the subtle danger. The most harmful ones aren't loud or threatening. They're calm, charming, sometimes even comforting. They make you feel safe, just long enough to get close enough to your heart, so they can begin to reshape it without you noticing. The Qur'an warns us. And so we have made for every prophet enemies, devils from among mankind and jinn. 6:112. It's not only the unseen jinn we must guard against. Some of these enemies know your name. They know your routine. They know the exact words that will shake your patience, weaken your prayers, or make you question your worth. And the frightening part? They look no different from anyone else. If you don't know the signs, you may not realize the danger until the damage is done. Sign 1. They weaponize your kindness. The first time you forgive them, it's out of mercy. The second time, it's because Islam teaches patience. But by the third time, you notice the shift. Their apologies shrink, their excuses become smoother, and their behavior grows worse. They're not remorseful. They're certain you'll never walk away. It plays out in small, familiar ways. A heated WhatsApp argument at midnight. You pour out your heart, then delete it and send, "It's fine." To them, that phrase isn't closure. It's permission to repeat the cycle tomorrow. They borrow money just for a week, yet months later, they're posting cafe selfies while ignoring your messages. When you finally bring it up, they laugh. "Come on, you know me." And you do know them. That's the problem. The trap is this. You start believing your compassion is the issue. But mercy is not a free pass for mistreatment. The Prophet said, "A believer is not stung from the same hole twice." Yes, Islam calls us to forgive, but also to protect ourselves. Kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's an invitation for exploitation. So watch closely. When you draw a gentle boundary, do they respect it? Or do they act sorry just long enough to reset the cycle? If they keep you trapped in that loop, it's not your mercy they value, it's how easily they can use it. And when that no longer works, they shift strategies. They'll start rewriting your reality. Sign 2. They make you question your own memory. You recall the words, the tone, the look. But when you confront them, they dismiss it. "That's not what I said." Or, "You're overreacting." Suddenly, you're questioning your own sanity. It looks like this. They raise their voice, but later insist they were just passionate. They cross your boundaries, then twist it around so it feels like you're the unreasonable one. Bit by bit, they chip away at your confidence until you no longer trust yourself. Sometimes it's subtle. A cropped screenshot in the family WhatsApp group, carefully edited to make it look like you started the argument. The longer you deal with people like this, the more you begin to doubt your own memory. And that's exactly their strategy. If they can make you question your version of events, they can slowly replace it with theirs. That's not confusion. It's control. Control without chains. This is the same tactic Shaytan uses. He doesn't force sin. He whispers. He rewrites the narrative until a believer's certainty begins to crack. It's exhausting. You find yourself apologizing just to keep the peace, even when you know deep down you weren't in the wrong. And every time you do, you hand them a little more power to define reality for you. Before long, you're not checking your own conscience anymore. You're checking their reaction to decide if you're right or wrong. Here's the reality check. If someone consistently makes you doubt what you saw, heard, or felt, that's not a misunderstanding. That's manipulation. And once they've stolen your trust in yourself, the next step is even more dangerous, pulling you away from the very thing that could heal you, your connection to Allah, and the people who remind you of Him. Sign 3. They make your faith feel like a burden. You pray at work, and someone smirks, "Wow, you've gotten so religious lately." You decline a mixed gender party because you're working on lowering your gaze, and your friends laugh, "Relax, it's not that serious." You share an ayah on Instagram, but delete it minutes later because you can already imagine their mocking comments. It's not that you're ashamed of Islam, you love your faith, but they make you feel like your deen is too much, like it doesn't belong in everyday life. And without realizing it, you start hiding parts of your worship just to keep the peace. Allah warns us in the Qur'an. And when you see those who engage in offensive talk concerning our verses, then turn away from them until they enter into another conversation. 6 hours 68 minutes. This isn't only about debates in public squares. Sometimes offensive talk is just a sarcastic joke from a friend that chips away at your confidence in worship. Even the Prophet faced this. The Quraysh mocked him, called him names, tried to make him doubt himself. But Allah strengthened him and reminded him to stand firm. The Prophet taught us, "Whoever among you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot, then with his tongue. And if he cannot, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith." So when someone makes you embarrassed for practicing your deen, they're not just mocking you, they're trying to strip even that weakest form of faith from your heart. And once they succeed in making you ashamed of worship, they don't stop there. The next step is worse. They blur the line between what is halal and haram, until sin feels normal. Sign 4. They desensitize you to sin. The slide never begins with something loud. It starts in silence. You used to skip a questionable scene in a Netflix series. Now you let it play because it's just one moment. You used to scroll past crude TikTok trends. Now you double tap, maybe even share them for a laugh. You used to feel your chest tighten when you missed far. Now it's, everyone oversleeps sometimes. The real danger isn't the action itself. The real danger is when it no longer feels wrong. The greatest loss isn't only in committing a sin. It's in losing the awareness that it is a sin. And in today's world, hyper-distracted, obsessed with entertainment, drowning in content, this desensitization happens daily. Social media turns disobedience into relatable clips. Netflix packages immorality as storytelling. And the people around you encourage the drift. You're being too hard on yourself. Come on, live a little. Don't be extreme. It sounds harmless, but this is exactly how Shaytan works. Allah tells us, "And Satan made their deeds seem fair to them." Surah An-Nahl 16 hours 63 minutes. He doesn't drag you into fire overnight. He makes the fire feel like home. The Prophet warned, when sin is committed in a community, and they are able to change it but do not, Allah will soon punish all of them. Muslim. Why? Because once wrong becomes normal, it spreads. And once it spreads, resistance dies. Ibn al-Qayyim said, "A dead heart is not the one that sins, but the one that sins without pain." That's the real danger. Not the act itself, but when crossing a line no longer stings. Look around today. A missing salah gets brushed off as busy life. A music with explicit lyrics blasts at weddings without protest. A hijab comes off, just for one night, at an event. A Ramadan ends, and with it, the Qur'an closes until next year. In a society where almost everything pushes you away from Allah, it's terrifyingly easy for disobedience to blend into the background. And the human Shaytan in your life, they celebrate this. They join in, cheer you on, call it freedom or open-mindedness. Because they know, or a believer who feels numb won't fight back. Or a believer who feels numb stops making tawbah. Or a believer who feels numb doesn't even notice the widening gap between themselves and Allah. So here's the heart check. Do you still feel the sting when you sin? Or have you learned to silence it? If you've stopped feeling it, that's not peace. That's the alarm screaming you're in danger. And the people who help keep that alarm quiet, they are not your friends. Because once you're numb, you're easier to control. And the next move for people like this is to keep your life chaotic, so you never find clarity to wake up again. Sign 5. They feed on your chaos. Watch closely. Some people only show up when there's fire. Notice the pattern. When your life is calm, your heart steady, your worship consistent, they're nowhere to be found. But the moment drama strikes, they're front row, asking for the tea, the screenshots, the blow-by-blow retelling of who said what. Sign 5. They feed on your chaos. Notice the pattern. Calm you is harder to manipulate. Chaotic you is easier. Maybe you've seen it firsthand. You're working on your deen, building a steady routine. Then they drop into your DMs with gossip about someone you cut off months ago. You've had a week full of Qur'an and Salah. Then they drag you into a heated WhatsApp family debate that leaves you drained, angry, and too tired to pray Isha with Kush. It's not always obvious malice. Sometimes it's dressed up as concern. I just thought you should know what they said about you. But watch the effect. After speaking with them, your chest feels heavy, your mind won't slow down, your mood is poisoned. That isn't care. That isn't love. That's feeding. Allah tells us in the Qur'an, Satan has gained control over them, so he made them forget the remembrance of Allah. Surah Al-Mujadila 58:19. Chaos is one of Shaytan's easiest tools. Because when you're constantly caught in emotional storms, arguments, grudges, gossip, you lose the stillness needed for deep dew, for reflection, for tasting the sweetness of worship. Even in the time of the Prophet, hypocrites stirred conflict deliberately. In the Battle of Uhud, some abandoned the fight midway, spreading confusion and breaking morale. The tactic hasn't changed. Distract, divide, destabilize. Human Shaytan understand this well. A believer restless inside is far easier to pull away from Allah than a believer grounded in Sakina. So look closely at your circle. Who disappears when you're at peace, but reappears the moment drama sparks? Or who gives you advice that escalates instead of calming? Who smiles when you're flustered, but grows cold when you're focused? Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's spiritual maintenance. The Prophet said, part of the perfection of one's Islam is to leave that which does not concern him. And sometimes, what doesn't concern you is other people's chaos, especially when they're trying to make it your cage. Because here's the truth. Someone who thrives on your storms will never celebrate your healing. When you find peace, they lose access. When you grow firm in your din, their influence fades. And not everyone around you will let that happen quietly. So maybe, as you've listened, a few faces came to mind. The one who twists your kindness into a leash. The one who rewrites the past until you doubt your own memory. The one who makes you shrink your din to fit their comfort zone. The one who numbed you to sins that used to break your heart. The one who seems to breathe easier when your life is messy. But understand, this isn't about going home tonight and declaring, "You're a human Shaytan." Islam doesn't teach us to label people as evil. This is about you, your heart, your protection, your amana. Because when Allah warns us in the Quran about devils from mankind and jinn, it isn't so we can gossip about who fits the category. It's so we can guard our souls, set boundaries, and stay close to Him. It's not so we can label others. It's so we can recognize the patterns and guard ourselves before the damage is done. That protection will look different for each of us. Sometimes it means distance. Sometimes it means silence. Sometimes it means reshaping a relationship so it no longer has access to your weak spots. Remember, mercy in Islam is never permission for abuse. The Prophet forgave, but he also set boundaries. He took steps to protect himself and his companions. And maybe this is the hardest truth. Some of the people you love most, family, old friends, people who once held you when you cried, could also be the very ones pulling you away from Allah without you even realizing it. That's why the lines have to be drawn gently, but firmly. You can still make do for them. You can still smile when you see them. But you are not obliged to hand them your heart like an unlocked door. Guarding your heart is not selfishness. It's ibda. It's protecting the place where your Iman lives. So if these words reached you at the right moment, leave a quiet prayer. Ya Allah, protect my heart from every shame, human or jinn. Because you never know who might say Amin. Until then, choose peace over chaos. Choose Allah over approval. And choose the kind of company that makes your faith feel lighter, not heavier. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.